Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to make a winged box card. And this has some pop-up features in the center, but also some side panels that you can use to extend your design. I'm starting with a full sheet of cardstock, 8.5 by 11, and this is 80-pound cover stock. And I'm going to score before I cut. So my first line was at 4¼ inches right down the center from the short side. And then I'm going to turn my cardstock over, keeping the short side at the top, and score at 2 1/8 inches from each side. I will cut that panel in half at 5½ inches, and I will have 2 identical scored panels to work with for my card. I'm going to set one of those panels aside, and from the other panel I'm going to cut 2 1-inch strips off the top. And then from the remaining panel I'm going to cut across at about 1/3 of the way down, and I'm cutting in a slight curve that goes up and then down because that's how I want my card design. You can cut straight across if you want to, but cutting about 1/3 of the way down will give you 2 layers for your scene. So these are the cuts made to my second half sheet. The next thing to do is to plan out your card design or scene and prepare the back panel. So I'm going to create a spring scene and I want a cloudy sky. So I have a cloud stencil, a blender brush, and some oxide ink, and that's what I'm going to use for my background. Just inking across the panel and turning the stencil at different angles as I go to create some variety in this sky. When that's done, I'm going to work with those 1-inch strips, and I want to keep the center fold line, but I'm going to cut the ends of the strips off along the other score lines, so I just have the center sections left. And now we need new score lines. So on this first one, I'm going to score at 1 inch from each end. And on the second one, I will be scoring at 1/2 inch from each end. And then go ahead and fold on all the score lines to get the strips ready for the next step. I'm going to start with this strip where I scored the 1-inch ends. And that is going to need some adhesive on those end tabs, and a tape adhesive with a liner is going to work best here. So a strip of adhesive on each end. And the placement will depend on your card design, but you'll want to make sure you place your strips in the bottom half of your card base so they're covered up by your front panel. And the most important thing is to be sure the center score line matches up with the line on the card base. So get that in place first before you remove your tape liner. And then once you have it in place, you can remove the liner on the tabs one at a time, flip them up, pull off the liner and flip them back down, and adhere both sides down to the card base. And then when you fold the card up, the center fold of the card base will go back and the center fold of the strip will go forward. And that is the beginning of our pop-up box feature in the center of the card. The second strip needs adhesive on the ends. And then fold those tabs back, and that strip will go right over the first one in the very same way. For the front of your card, go ahead and do whatever suits your card design. I have got 2 grassy hill layers here that I'm inking up. And I didn't have a grass stencil, so I'm just using a die cut as a stencil to add a little texture. I'll add a strip of double tape across the bottom to adhere those together really well. When you do this, make sure that your score lines are lined up rather than the ends. Because of the folds and layering, the ends might not line up perfectly, but you can just trim off any little edges that shift out. Then the front panel is going to push out at the center and create the front of the box portion, and we'll adhere the front to the back just at the sides. And I did those one at a time just to be sure my placement was right and I didn't get glue everywhere. And for this I did use liquid glue, so I had a little bit of wiggle room. And so here the base is complete and we are ready to add some embellishments. I went ahead and prepared my die cuts off camera. If you do use dies, you can lay the dies directly onto your card base with the card laid flat like this, so you can get an idea of what goes where before you do any cutting. On the side panels, just make sure that your embellishments don't extend past the center fold if you want your card to fit in an A2 envelope. For the center section, I like using narrow strips of acetate to mount my floating embellishments, and I've found that super glue gel works best for adhering the acetate in place, and it doesn't take much glue or much time to stick the pieces together. You do need to be careful of your fingers while you're getting the strips into place on your card, but you won't have to worry about it letting go of the paper or the acetate later, which is a problem with some other adhesives. I'm using the outside of the card as a guide for where to trim the bottom of my strips, and then we have got all kinds of room for placement on those inner strips of the card. You can glue things to the front or back of each of those surfaces, and even to the base of the card and to the back side of the front panel. So there are lots of options inside there. For placement for these embellishments, you'll just want to be sure to put things at different heights and then make sure that they stay within the boundary of the card when it's closed and don't knock into each other or into the folds when the card is open, since they'll be on the sides of those pop-up tabs inside. Again, for the outside embellishments, just make sure they don't extend past the center fold or any other edges and you'll be fine. I've got my larger die cut butterflies here, and I'm going to carefully add some craft glue to the wings just where they will be touching the outside and front panels of my card. I don't want any glue on the parts of the wings that are extending into my open space. So I'll do that for the pink butterfly and then repeat the same on the other side with the orange one. So those are the basics. Also, when you're ready to mail this card, you're going to fold the sides to the back, and then you'll be able to tuck the card into an A2 envelope. The only thing you may need to note is thickness. With all those layers folded up in the center, this card may need extra postage. So here's the finished card. I just added a few flowers to my hillside and a sentiment at the top. Here is another card I did a few months ago, and this one was done using elements from a Spellbinders card kit. So this one was done with card bases from the kit and some pre-printed die cut shapes. So as always, lots of options for your own design, and I hope you'll share your ideas with us. Thank you so much for watching.